One man, one sauce, one desire. To take your taste buds on a journey of a lifetime. Introducing Bernie Wild's Adventure Sauce. Be ready to experience a rush of excitement, a hint of danger, a possibility of romance.
Hey, I got this. Hi, folks. Mike Rosado here, host of the Pencil Pushers podcast. I wanted to take a moment to share with you a new heat sauce that some of my friends and I have created called, that's right, Bernie Wild's Adventure Sauce. The all-purpose condiment sauce with a kick you've been waiting for. Unlike traditional hot sauces, Bernie Wild's focuses on the flavor and not the heat. Tangy, sweet, salty, savory, and smoky. With a bit of a kick, Bernie Wild's was made to put excitement back into your kitchen. It's perfect for tossing into salads and pastas, drizzling on burgers, tacos, and takeout, or just straight up dipping. The versatility of Bernie Wild's makes it an instant must-have for any kitchen. Bernie Wild's gets its unique, craveable flavor from hot yellow and chipotle peppers with steamed carrots, maple syrup, rosemary, charred onion, and more, making each and every drop as good as the first. Not only is Bernie Wild's Adventure Sauce packed full of flavor, it's also vegan, gluten-free, and made with no preservatives or stabilizers, making it good for you, good for the environment, and hands down delicious. But as ready as we are to share it with you and the world, we still need the funds to get it into production and onto your plate. We've got a 30-day Kickstarter running from October 14th through November 13th to raise the funds to make this dream a reality. And with your help, we can get it done. Just go to BernieWilds.com and sign up for our mailing list to be the first Bernie backer. That's BURNYWILDS.com to join us as we take our maiden voyage of
Bernie Wild's Adventure Sauce.
You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today we swing out to the west coast of North Carolina, where you cannot tell the story of craft beer in North Carolina without talking about Wicked Weed. So long overdue, but today we have the co-founder, Walt Dickinson, of Wicked Weed Brewing, joining us today. Welcome, Walt.
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for having us on. Really stoked to be here.
I appreciate it, man. I always it's so stupid. Every time I hear the last name Dickinson, it just makes me think, Bruce Dickinson. Are you the Bruce Dickinson? Babies, babies, babies. I put my pants on one leg at a time, but when I put my pants on, I make gold records. I'm, of course, referring to the cowbell skit on SNL. But I'm like, what is that Dickinson? Every time I hear Dickinson, I think that, not like I think of Emily Dickinson like a scholar would think.
Yeah.
No, I just think of dumb skits from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, exactly. I'm doing my best to sully the name along with that skit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. It was an honor. We were just kind of, thinking about beer and thinking about what we could, who we could bring into the show, and then out popped Wicked Weed, and we thought, oh my God, this is a no-brainer. This is amazing. I was a fan of Wicked Weed living back in California. The name was already well known, and this is long before everything that's gone on with your business. This is back when it was just a tiny little craft brewery nestled in the hills of Asheville. The Funkatorium and all the coolness that comes along with Asheville in itself. But here we are years later, and so much has kind of come of it. I would be bereft if I didn't say it was a polarizing view sometimes about what people would think about what had happened to Wicked Weed, their beloved.
People had feelings.
There were feelings. Some people were hurt. Some people were excited. I think there was some monies were exchanged. Some opinions were exchanged. But maybe, if you don't mind, I know you've told the story a million times, but I think if anything, now that I guess 3+ years have gone by. The perspective might be a great angle and a great idea to discuss what has gone on since some acquisitions have happened with Wicked Weed. If you could at least catch us up to speed.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'll just kind of do like the flyby. You know, Wicked Weed, we founded the brewery December 28th, 2012, just a little brew pub in Western North Carolina. It was my sister and I, and then the Guthys. So my sister and I were representing the Dickinsons, and then the Guthys, my current operating business partner, Ryan Guthey, and then his parents, Rick and Denise. You know, we all believed in the same dream of opening this brew pub and creating this brand that I think really just kind of was to us the next step forward in craft beer as we were kind of seeing the evolution of what was going on. And Jessica and I both felt like we had a voice as far as what beers looked like and wanted to be just part of the movement. You know, I think it was just this obsessive hobby and something that we obviously like innately had a knack for and just like put us in the right creative space to kind of interact with people. And we love bars, we love restaurants, and so does Ryan and the Guthys. And I think it just came together to create this really special brand that, you know, obviously you guys know we make IPAs and sour beers, kind of put us on the map early on. And, you know, fast forward 4.5 years later, we were kind of at what I would say is kind of like the peak of craft beer's growth there when we were seeing a lot of these acquisitions. And, you know, we've been sought after by a handful of companies who were really interested in us for a couple of years there at that point. And, you know, at the end of the day, we had a few offers on the table. We did feel like we were growing faster than we were ready, and we're kind of excited to take that next step and bring on a partner to kind of help us with that growth. And, you know, I never thought it would be AB, but at the end of the day, once you start looking at it, they really build a model that supports their brands, that allows the leadership in those brands to kind of hold their place. They're kind of a passive, supportive partner. They're there in a role of like trying to give us the tools we need, but not telling us where we need to go. That comes with a whole lot of challenges and bureaucracy and restraints. And but I do think it's given us an opportunity to really evolve and challenge kind of this notion that a brand loses its soul when it's acquired by a big company. And I think me and my partner Ryan and the teams here, we still are maintaining a ton of our original staff. You know, that's what we're fighting for, is to change kind of the machine from within. And I think we've seen some great melding of that, and the brands, you know, we're getting pretty big now, and I think we're still making some great beers. So it's been a really exciting and kind of like more rewarding journey than I thought it was maybe going to be when I stepped in. But that said, I don't really plan ahead too much. So I really had no fucking clue what I was getting into.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So can we take it back from the beginning? So 2012, you and Ryan and family members and your sister started this, but what were you doing before then?
So me personally, California kid, grew up in SoCal, grew up in Pasadena and up in Carpinteria some.
Yeah.
Moved out here. Long story short, we were all West Coast folks. The Guthys moved here in the 80s. We moved here in the 90s. And basically, you know, went from, if we tell the story, basketball comes in. My dad and Ryan's dad played middle school, high school, and college basketball together.
Oh, wow.
We all played basketball. I played at UNCA for a couple of years. So went through that journey and kind of after leaving that, got into climbing, was traveling around the world climbing, also got into home brewing at that time, kind of like traveling around guerrilla home brewing all over the US. And then, you know, decided, I guess I kind of accidentally started my first company in my mid-20s, and that brought me back to Asheville. And then from there, I guess I decided I'd try to grow up a little bit. And so, you know, started building that company. And about 2010, my sister and I were just brewing a ton. She was starting to get really excited about opening a brewery. The idea of, you know, this was kind of like as craft beer was really starting to explode, and you were seeing all these nano breweries and stuff popping up. And she wanted to do that. And as we talked, I just realized, like, I had a gutter cleaning company at the time. It's like, why am I cleaning gutters? I'm like, you know, building this company with a thing I don't even give a shit about. Like, you know, this is something I'm passionate about. Let's just do this. And kind of, you know, we had a couple beers, made the decision we were going to go for it. Long story short, brought in the Guthys. And, you know, there's a lot of nuance to how the deal came together, but they were instrumental in making the decision to be in Asheville, to be downtown. And I think, you know, when you look back at a journey of a company that's successful, especially, I think you look at all these moments and all these crossroads where, you know, you made this decision over that decision, and you can't imagine how you'd be where you were if that decision wasn't made at that time. And there's a lot of those moments that happened kind of getting us to where we were, but, you know, that led us to the place where we opened the brewery. And From there, I can kind of take you through the journey with growth, but it was like a new facility every year for 4 years. The Funkatorium opened in 2014. So pub in 2013, Funkatorium in 2014, production brewery in 2015, the Funk House, which is our new current sour production and headquarters in 2016, and then acquisition in 2017. So it's been a heck of a journey for the brand, and I could go into all the nuances of how it's evolved, but it's been pretty intense.
Here's my question. So you say you're not a planner. So then is Ryan the planner in the whole in the relationship? Or your sister?
We're dreamers, right? We're dreamers, and he's the planner, right? Like, so I think we dream together, and he puts it on paper. Yeah. So he's the ops guy. He and Rick are just these incredible operators, which has really freed me up from doing the things I suck at and allowing me to do the things I'm better at. And I think we're just a great yin yang combo in that sense.
I think that's so important to have, like, business wise. It's like
I'm a huge fan of partners in business. You need support.
Yeah, and it's if you almost look at it's like kind of like the Henry Ford assembly line model. I mean, not everyone needs to build the entire car. You just need somebody to put the seats in. Someone needs to put the engine in, and you put the person that knows how to put the seats in. That's their skill set. You got to put the best person to do that. And I mean,
unfortunately, my job is I just do like the doodle on the consumer guide papers that are in the glove box or something. So
that's fortunate. You get to do that.
I'd love to be the guy that does that.
Yeah, somebody gets to put that into fruition, which is pretty awesome. On this podcast, one of the things that, even though we're a food and beverage podcast, I think both Max and I are intrigued by the business aspect of people like dreamers, because at the heart of it, I think he and I are dreamers ourselves, and maybe we're always just trying to get that golden ticket in. But so how do we do this ourselves? But you come up with this beer, it's successful, you're home brewing, and then all of a sudden you're like the it people in North Carolina, getting significant distribution already within 2 years. I mean, if you think about it, it's easy to say, looking backwards, well, you opened this place in downtown Asheville, that was strategic and smart, but what were some of the other keys to success? Because, like you said, you had all these this unbelievable amount of competition with craft breweries and nano breweries opening up at North Carolina in the exact same time.
Yeah, it was a really interesting time. I mean, I think great moments in success in companies specifically, it's all about like hard work, integrity, great ideas, talent, but it's all timing, right? And the timing was just like really in a good place for us as we opened. There's a lot of attention on Asheville with Sierra Nevada and everybody coming here. Mm-hmm. And then, we were just, kind of, I'm not going to say lucky because it was all, skill that got us there, but man, we were making really great beers. And I think we were at a place where the South has kind of been underserviced in the craft beer world because of how backwards most of the Southern laws are for beer distribution and for craft breweries. And North Carolina was kind of like a little beacon in that. And I think that's why North Carolina became kind of the epicenter of craft beer in the South, is because of those laws that allowed us to self-distribute and lower taxation and things like that are, you look at some of the laws in some of the other states at that time, it was almost impossible to be a craft brewery. So I think it suppressed the progression of specifically the IPA category and just styles in general. And if you're going to the West Coast, you really saw that big difference in the quality of what was happening on the West Coast versus what was happening on the East Coast from an IPA standpoint as a whole. Not to say there weren't great IPAs out there, of course there are, but the true like San Diego style, bone dry, West Coast big hot punch beers like Pliny, all the stuff Pizza Port and Jeff Bagby and Tommy Arthur and those guys were doing were huge inspiration to us. So I think that was like one of the big opportunities we had, was like to show up and make some really true West Coast style beers. And I think that was kind of one of those big opportunities we saw, and we just kind of held to it. And then we just saw the momentum of that. And then the sour program, right? We'd already, before we opened, we started making sour beer. I'd worked with, it was actually Craggy at the time, now Highwire, to help us contract brew the first batch of Black Angel, the first batch of Dark Age, things like that, to make sure we opened with kind of that what I thought of is what we thought of as like the modern lineup, right? Like we wanted to be making like the beers that you give a shit about, like kick-ass double IPAs. Like we wanted to make that pint-worthy double IPA. We wanted to make the sour beers and beers like Consecration and La Folie and all the Jolly Pumpkin stuff and everything that was happening with Jester King and Crooked Stave. Those were all inspiration, right? So we were trying to kind of puzzle all that together and just put together this brand that was just reflecting what we thought was the coolest things in beer. And lucky for us, a lot of other people did too. And that kind of led to the rest of the growth. And then from there, we were just focused on, the integrity of the product. We were shipping cold, 60-day shelf life, We made sure it was in the cooler. We just wanted to make sure as IPAs went out, as sour beer went out, we really told the story with it and kept the quality of the experience where we wanted it to be. And I think it really led us to getting a chance to stand on top of the mountain for a little bit, which is pretty cool.
I do want to take a quick break real quick to talk about Folks Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit, but they are champions of all good things crafted in North Carolina and the folks that make them. Whether it is a vinyl album that they procured called the Carolina Quarantine Project, creating music while sheltered in place, they have that for sale on their website, or it could be their folk journal that comes out quarterly, or even their new general store that's opening up in New Bern. So learn more about Folks Foundation by going to their website, folksfoundation.org, and be sure to consider a small donation to help support North Carolina makers. I appreciate you bringing up the sour program. That's something I wanted to kind of delve into for a moment. The Funkatorium itself, correct me if I'm wrong, but that kind of exclusively deals in the sour game. Is that correct? Like you were, I guess, like in layman's terms, from what I've heard many times, is that a proper sour program, you need to almost have a separate facility to do all your sours because of the yeast strains and all. It's like at least it's more conducive to making a fantastic sour if it's being made separately. And is that kind of the idea of making the
Yeah, I think, when we look at the basics of like what makes a sour beer, I mean, a sour beer is we're working with mixed culture fermentation, right? So we're taking kind of the things that normally would be considered like spoilers or just natural occurring yeast and bacteria that go through a lot of the same things that are in wine process, right? But the alcohol's higher, so it doesn't affect it the same, or things that happen in the fermentation of whiskey before it's distilled, right? Those are all the same kind of things that are happening in a sour brewery. And the difference between that and being in what we call a clean brewery at our brewery, like where we make IPA, is that, it's a very sanitary process. Not that everything's sanitary, we're always cleaning, but it's a one yeast strain and it's very precision driven. And the stuff we're using for sour beer, if it got into those tanks, right? If it got into the system, it's very hardy. It could cause huge problems from a spoiled product issue. So it's really smart to keep them separate. I'm not saying you can't. There's lots of breweries who do it in the same place. Completely reasonable. Cleaning works, sanitizing works, but it's just, there's a lot more risk. So we separated early on for that. But the second piece to it is that it's apples and oranges, man. It's like, they're different things. This is much more like winemaking and cider. And that's why, we'll talk about it later, but, we're making wine and cider now and doing some other projects. And I think it's more about this idea of, kind of artisanal mixed culture fermentation and working with fruits and grains and just, it's a very niche thing. It's very different than, pumping out 200 barrels of IPA a day. So, so I think it's a good move for companies who want to grow those two sides. And I think it's also just about the kind of team you need to build and the way you approach it creatively. Yeah.
You don't want your lactobacillus in your lagers and your IPAs, right?
That's right. No bueno, dude. Nobody wants that sour IPA. They tried to make it. It didn't turn out good. Nobody wanted it.
I was going to say, if you just maybe forced yourself to make it, I imagine that if anyone's going to do it, it'd be you guys, considering that you're
no, we did.
Yeah.
And it didn't work?
And it was good.
Oh,
yeah.
It was called Amorous. And I mean, I'd argue that really La Terroir, New Belgium's dry hop sour was like really the OG one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it's actually an awesome style.
All right, so I have a few opinions, and I'd like to know your thought. What I did, now you guys were gracious enough to send us what I thought was going to be a very small little tight gift pack of like the current
we don't
releases.
Do small tight gift packs. We do big cases, lots of beer.
We here at the kitchen, our studios, we had a delivery that came in on it was a Thursday or Friday over the weekend, and I wasn't in the studio at the time. My building manager Tony, who some of the listeners know,
Tony's Taco Tube.
Yeah,
fame.
He was gracious enough to accept the box and then keep it cold and bring it in. And he's like, this box is really heavy, man. And he's like, and it's huge. And if anyone sees me on Facebook, you saw that I just I shoved my daughter into the box and then like walked around and then she jumped out of it. So if it gives any sense of how big the box was, like you can put a 7-year-old in the box. And she, don't get me wrong, folks, she asked to get put into the box.
There were holes for breathing.
It was, yeah. She was only in there for like 46 hours. It was fine. It was fine. But I say that because you guys just sent the mother load of beer. There was about 6 cases of beer in this box, some like 6 packs and some 12 packs and all. But I am currently over at White Hill Kitchen and Brewing, where I'm with a bunch of beer heads and a bunch of nerds that love beer. And I thought, hey guys, if you want, since we have so much of this beer, why don't I bring a couple samples over on Sunday afternoon and let's just all drink them together. And like, I want to get the perspective, I want to get, insight, and also just kind of group think on all these beers. So we went through and we just to set the table, we had the Wicked Wee Brewing Daylight, which is kind of like, I would say, your crushable, easy drinking lager, if you will, and just kind of go from there. Next up, we had the Coastal Love Hazy IPA, which, as it indicates, it's a murky but still kind of big hoppy IPA, but not as intense as the one that most people would be familiar with, the purple labeled Pernicious, which you can find pretty much in many places around, and I'll get to that in a sec. And then specifically, like, you have kind of more of like I guess, dare I say, like more of a dessert beer or these dark, like chocolate malted beers. Mm-hmm. And so I just grabbed one of the four. There were 4 different flavors inside the pack. And the one that we're going to open now is the S'mores, which, just thinking about a beer that is flavored after s'mores sounds fucking awesome. Yeah. Lastly, but in the cans, we had the Raspberry Starfruit Burst Session Sour, which is unusual to me, and I want you to explain that in a quick moment, just that it is a sessionable sour. And then we haven't popped it yet because it's been looking us in the eye for the whole weekend, and that's the Trans-Am Lamb Cultura Trans-American Lambic. I am assuming that what that all kind of responds to, but it is in a beautiful 750-liter bottle, like a champagne bottle, and it really wants to be open, so we are going to open that soon and get into it. But
it should be open.
Yeah, maybe I'll just pop it now to let all the beauty of it. Oh, and I didn't even realize that it actually. So there's a bottle cap that was needlessly put on there because inside there's a cork inside.
Yeah, I like to build anticipation.
Yeah, I was just popping it right now, thinking, oh, we're gonna get this great little pah sound, and then I went, oh damn it, there's a goddamn cork inside.
Well, we get the pop,
but that's probably, I imagine, for a lot of purposes, but you've got a lot of yeah, there we go. All right, you got a lot going on in that beer, so let's keep it under high pressure. But so we tasted through all the first 5 beers that I mentioned over at White Hill with the group, and got like a great perspective on the flavors of beer. But more importantly, what I really was asking those guys was just perspective. These are a lot of beer heads that have been thinking about Wicked Weed, and it's like, man, yeah, those guys are awesome. They're like the holy grail of beer, but man, they sold to Anheuser-Busch, bro. And you also think about anybody that's ever quote unquote sold out, and I have never been one that backed that narrative. I always look at it like, oh no, you're kind of cashing in. You achieved success to a level that a larger company recognized what you've done and said, we can make money off of this, and we need a creative arm into our realm, because we, as say like Anheuser-Busch, are just so heavily known for the drivers that we bring out into the market, and it's like, it would be nice to understand this other category that we really are not well represented in. And so if we're going to do that, let's get the best people that are represented in that area and kind of not fuck with them too much. Be like, the reason why they're great is because they're creative and they get to do their thing. So if we could just harness their power and give them the tools they need, so that like, I'm certain that you've had a meeting with the guys at Anheuser-Busch, and they're saying, what do you need? How can you, what's keeping you back, holding you back from doing even bigger and greater things? And to be able, in any walk of life, if you're a chef, if you're making cars, if you're whatever, if you're cleaning gutters, if back in the day someone said, what do you need to clean those gutters a little bit better? What tools do you need? You'd be like, oh, I got a laundry list of things I could use. If anyone's going to help support your business to do the next thing, why wouldn't you do that? But in Asheville, and I'm just speaking in generalities, I'm sure not everyone from Asheville is this way, but the outside perspective of Asheville is it's very like bohemian. It's very independent. It's not a corporate run city by any stretch of the imagination. I don't even know if you can even eat at a Taco Bell inside the Asheville proper. You'd know better than I would, but the idea is that Asheville is kind of running by its own beat. It's doing its own thing. So to have one of the biggest brands that they have there then get sold to Anheuser-Busch, InBev, is like, I would say that the consensus was it was a punch in the gut for the locals. They're like, dude, bro, how could you make this happen, man? And so how do you speak to that? Like now with 3 years perspective, where do you find yourself fitting in that argument?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think it's a really interesting. I think it has a lot to do with how people feel about specifically like food and beverage in general. I think we're really lucky that we get to work in a space where our job is what everybody does for fun, which is challenging, right? I mean, you guys know, like, it's not always easy. Like when your job just never goes home when you're in food and bev, right? Because when you get done working all day on your food and beverage job, what do you do with your family or your friends? You go out for food and beverage and you have that experience again.
Exactly.
So, I think that there's a special place with products, like with brands like a brewery or a distillery or a restaurant or whatever, where people become like super hyper attached and it becomes a very personal thing to them. Whereas like, maybe a watch or a pair of shoes or a hat doesn't feel the same way. Right. And I think that it kind of just speaks to this passion that we all have for this thing that's brought us together forever. I think that's why this area is so great, right? I mean, we can talk about cultura and the restaurant and like the beer and what that means, but it's the whole impetus for that is this, talking about this journey we've had with agriculture and that we've had with culturing, like fermentation and this whole experience that basically is beer or wine or spirits throughout humanity. And I think that ingrains some very, very deep attachments to things that we consume. And I think that people are very into beer. We're in a generation where people have never known more or cared more about the products they're eating and drinking, which is opening up this amazing world for people like me and all the other makers and creators out there to like do new things and challenge ourselves to be better and expand the categories. And with that, when you decide to take a shift that, they feel like is the dumbing down of all the things they care about, which is typically what giant corporations kind of do to products. And we've learned these triggers from watching it happen over and over again in different spaces. I think people are scared of that. I think you always learn to be scared of corporations. And I think the only way corporations become great is by, getting people like us in the mix and challenging them to look at things differently. And so I guess to shorten this long-winded answer, it hurt a lot. It sucked. It was a bummer. Like going, I always kind of joke. I went from being like Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader in about 30 seconds. And it's weird to have like, your community and everybody kind of like freaking out about this thing you did. But at the end of the day, like I look back and I recognize that was really just because they cared so much about the brand that I had been part of creating. And that's like super meaningful. So what I realized is when that happened, proof's in the pudding. This is time to like put our head down and just show people that we're going to hold to our guns and we're going to keep making quality beer and we're going to fight the good fight and we're going to help other breweries. And I think this has given us a platform to do like a huge amount of good. And I think we're still making some kick-ass beer. And so, I hope that your brewers over there still found the products to be things they were inspired by and that they were psyched about the brand. At least like that we, whether we're a corporate owned company or not, I think my goal was to make sure the liquid never showed that. And I think that our teams have fought really hard for that.
Yeah. By the way, with the 3 prequels of Star Wars, as shitty as they were, the third one, when Anakin does become Darth Vader, was probably the coolest one. So that's fine. At least you got that.
Oh, for sure. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was a big moment.
Yeah.
It was a big moment.
It was very Frankenstein-esque, though. That was kind of like campy, fire, and then he turns into Darth Vader.
Wasn't the best executed, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Obi-Wan just slaughtered him, where he took the high ground. Well, so I want to ask one question because that moment, like, what again? Back to the non-planning aspect of that. Was there an idea at some point that like, oh, we're getting big, we either need to find a lot more money or figure out how we're going to increase our distribution, or we are going to, get in bed with one of the larger corporations? Or did it work organically where you said a bunch of them started calling you? And then, so what's that like, and how do you make that decision of who to go with?
Oh man, it was the latter. They were all calling us. I mean, we had private equity and big breweries kind of knocking on our door for probably a year and a half before we started even thinking about. I mean, it was just like, cool, flattered you're here. Here's
right.
The brewery. We have no interest in selling our company. Like we're just a little pub. We're growing. We don't even have distribution rights yet. Like, so we kind of looked at it that way for a while. And then, a year later, we signed distribution rights statewide. The brand was growing. We had another 100% growth year. We were in the middle of we just finished building our finishing our production brewery and we're just looking at all the expansion that we were looking at, like another $8 million of spends to build capacity so we could keep on the track we were on. And, that seemed daunting for, my partners, Rick and Denise. They thought they were opening a little tiny brew pub in downtown North Carolina. And, all of a sudden,
you got $8 million of costs.
Exactly. In their 60s now, looking for kind of a fun retirement project. And now we got this monster growing. And so, they were all in. And I think we just kind of got to a place well, look, this seems like I'm looking at all these partnerships that are happening in the industry. And it felt like the timing was feeling like it was kind of getting to the right time where the industry was getting more competitive. Maybe this would be a good time to look for a partner. So we thought we'd just entertain it. And I mean, it's just amazing how fast you go from, hey, I'll hear what you have to say to here's a deal on the table. What do you think? I mean, that happened so fast. And I think that we kind of just, as soon as we opened that door, everybody was at the table. And actually it was pretty wild. We started listening, kind of actually having conversations in November of, I don't know, maybe it was I can't even remember. But point is, it was 2 or 3 months. They came in and then 2-3 months later, it was oh my God, we're selling our company to Anheuser-Busch. So it happened very fast. There was a lot of internal conversations about what it would mean for the brewery long term. And it all came back to, this was the deal we felt was best for the brand, best for the employees, and would allow us to keep the company intact. We never really believed we weren't ready to retire. That wasn't the plan. We just, it was the right time to take a partner, and we wanted to pick one that we would double down on. And again, I mean, I was so surprised to find out that it was Anheuser-Busch, but at the end of the day, I mean, just for all the things you said leaning in, I feel like you just talked to Mika before this call. That's their methodology. They really do believe in the magic we have. And until we prove them wrong, they're going to keep betting on us. I think that's the big difference now. It's not my company. So as long as we're us, they're betting on us. And as long as we keep coming through, I think we'll keep changing things. And that's kind of where we are now. And we're going to have another really great year and added 120 employees since the acquisition. And, it's just been a really good journey for the company so far.
And so I guess the part of the deal is you guys get to run autonomously, or, I mean, just to get to brass tacks, do you have to come up with numbers, and are there goals and expectations for your company?
Yeah, absolutely. And,
okay.
Every company should have targets, right? Should have goals. You should have business plans. I think what we've done is we've gotten a lot more structured about it. I mean, early on, jokingly, not planning. I mean, it wasn't that we didn't plan. We planned. Unfortunately, we had to tear up the business plan in the first week because we were already on track to beat our 4-year projections in year one.
Not
right?
unfortunate. Yeah, that's
very fortunate. Yeah,
your 4-year
right?
projection
totally.
in year one. You said that's amazing.
In week one, I think he said.
Well, in week one, we were on track. We were just watching everything. I'm like, oh my God, I need more tanks. I need whatever. And we did. We thought we were going to brew 12. Our lofty goal was to brew 1,200 barrels our first year at the pub, and we brewed just under 3,000. And it was kind of like that going forward. So, we were just playing catch up. It was just instinctual moves, what's the right thing to do, keep growing the company. Rick was really supportive. And then now, the big difference is, we plan, we plan a year out. Yeah. The innovation's more challenging, but I think it's helped us be more focused. I mean, I think anything we do small, like the sour program, whatever, there's very few handcuffs, but when we talk about bringing real brands to market and doing real things, it's much more challenging. We are in a big corporate structure. They do hold the purse strings, but they leave us completely alone to operate and drive the vision. And the challenges, the battles we fight. But that's why it's important guys like Ryan and I are here to fight those battles and make sure we're still getting the money to support the things that we believe in. And again, I couldn't be happier with the support we've gotten. That said, we've also shown them that we're worth believing in.
Yeah,
well, it doesn't. It's not dissimilar in your business structure as from the beginning when we opened the show when you said. That Ryan's more ops and you're doing a lot of the say I guess visionary stuff, creative stuff. Just to oversimplify, but if you're saying that, well, you stay in your lane, you do the thing that you're best at. Well, maybe the thing that you weren't ready for or had the ability to do was distribute to the level of which somebody that really understands how to do that, like an Anheuser-Busch, could do. So it really is you're still working in the same. Pattern of business structure, the way you're doing it. It's just now you are ready to play with the big boys, and the big boys of what makes them big is understanding distribution. It's not dissimilar to I said to Matt, and all my references are from the 90s grunge because I'm 43 years old, but Nirvana was once with Sub Pop Records, which was a cool indie record company, and then at some point Geffen Records came in and said, "Yeah, you're gonna take this to the next level." the albums didn't change, the music didn't change. It's like they still had the creatives writing, Nevermind and In Utero, and even the live performances that they did on Unplugged. That was still those three guys doing whatever it was. But what changed was how many albums they printed and how many CDs they put out and where they put them at. So you could get this stuff anywhere. And that's what leads me is to Pernicious. You can get Pernicious anywhere now. And that is like, it maybe that sounds like a horrible thing, but I'm telling you, listeners, think about this. When you stop at the local BP and you, go for it, Matt. Drink some Pernicious. Don't be shy. We just, by the way, we've been drinking.
Don't be shy, guys. Come on. It's like 10:30.
It's 10:30. We should be having copious amounts of high octane, high ABV beer right now.
Heck yeah.
But so like this is my reality. I come home from work. I drive down the street, and I'm like getting close to my house, and because of the new things that are happening in our lives, and like liquor, bars are shutting down early, and you can't get anything after a certain time. I can still go to the local BP mini mart just down the street from my house and get something to drink. But when I go in there, I see, sorry, Anheuser-Busch, but I see a bunch of Bud Light and Miller Lite and Budweiser. And then you also got like the decent ones. You got the Sam Adams, you got whatever. But then you look over and there's Wicked Weed Pernicious. And for a guy like me that likes craft and likes something that's fun and delicious, it's now available to me at a gas station, which doesn't sound super sexy to say that out loud, but there was a time where you couldn't buy that at the time at a place that was so conveniently located. Mm-hmm. But now, because you made this decision, you and your company like decided to collaborate, this is what the fruit of that really truly means for the community, is that now someone that actually likes craft and likes something that's fun can easily access this stuff everywhere. And so I don't understand where there would be a negative in that regard. And so the question that I have is, through all this growth, you now have a driver beer, such as Pernicious. Who's making that Pernicious?
We making that Pernicious.
No,
of course.
But as a team grows, I'm not insinuating that Anheuser-Busch's like team of people are making it. But do you get to the point now where like you're cellar master, or like in chef terms, like your sous chef, right? Like the guy that kind of is almost like he's the best cover artist of your music. The sous chef usually can do the things the chef created to the level of what the chef would do, and arguably sometimes can even execute better than the original chef, because that's their focus, is to emulate to the highest level. So do your head brewers still make Pernicious, or is that something that's kind of farmed off to the B team or the secondary guys, so that your A team can start making the new cool shit that you're trying to design?
I guess I would answer that like two ways. Kind of, first, yeah, you're totally right, man. Pre the Anheuser-Busch partnership with Wicked Weed, we didn't even sell Pernicious in grocery stores pretty much. I think Ingles was the only grocery store chain that had our beer. We were only in indie shops pre that. So now, yeah, you can go to a BT or you can go to Kroger's or whatever, and you see Pernicious and Coastal and all these beers. And I think that we're still maintaining that 75-day shelf life, which is, super low for the industry. Most breweries are much higher in the 90 to 120. And we're all cold chain. And I think that's like super important for IPAs, because if you think about it, it's probably a less stable beverage than like milk or orange juice. And, it's very important that it stays cold if you want that great hop aroma and all that care and energy you're talking about our brewmasters are putting into it to show up in the pint glass, right? So that's the big battle, is like, we always want to fight for, looking across the room, and when you open your Perny and I see you drinking it, that I know the quality of the experience you're having, right? Like, that's the big battle every day, and we're going to keep fighting. And I think we fought it really well to this point. And I think that when you do go buy Perny, it still tastes great. Now, as far as like how we make it, so I think there's two teams kind of, now that we've grown, it's like there's the product development team, and I've got, Joe Pwellick, who's our head brewer, and Sam Bryan, who's my R&D brewer here. And they're, along with, some other guys, and man, they're just so great at distilling down and just obsessively working. I mean, Sam Bryant's this just like, angsty, OCD Englishman who just won't give up on anything until it's perfect and has a brilliant palate. And Joe just gets the vibe. And then you've got Eric Leipold and Phil Barker who run basically the production side. And man, they are just machines, just precision machines. Everything is perfect every time. And I think that's really what drove the brand to be what it is Eric Leipold. You know, he was our founding head brewer. We hired him in, or brewing ops. Jessica, my sister, was the head brewer, but we all kind of shared the brewing piece. But the point is,
sure,
Jess and I were the creative. He was that just militant day-to-day execution. I think without that kind of precision, it's the same kind of thing that, you know, the operations guys I'm telling you about, right? It's that yin yang you were talking about, the creative and the execution, right? Eric and Rick and Ryan, those guys were those precision every day. Every cigarette butt was picked up. Every fermenter was scrubbed. I mean, you know, we always had the saying of like, if Ken Grossman walked in the brewery, I want him to be able to like eat off the floor behind any fermenter. And, you know, so it was just that kind of those two teams working together that created, I think, great products. And I think the battle's still there every day to like fight for those good products. And again, I think we've got a great creative squad that's like developing new stuff all the time. So it's really fun. And I just kind of sit back. Now I'm more like the conductor, right? I'm less in there writing the recipe. I'm more just kind of guiding the teams, tasting, giving feedback. And I've never had more fun creatively in my job. So it's awesome.
Yeah, that's an awesome place to be in.
I think that's the answer that everyone was hoping would be the case. I mean, the idea is that, yeah, you have a team. For one, the person that's created that recipe and, you know, took the copious notes and the operational design of it shouldn't have to be the person that continually makes the beer that is the driver. It should be so well defined and so put in that you can have people in place that can do that. Now, also, there is a skill level to be someone that can knock out that mainstay. I mean, Matt and I, going back to when we first met, we worked at a restaurant in Southern California, Cafe Del Rey, and the chef had taken over the menu. We always laughed. There was the black spaghetti. That was like a menu item. It was squid ink pasta that was, you know, made with a bunch of shellfish, and it had enoki mushrooms and had like a little bit of a red sauce, like a fresh bright tomatoes. It was delicious, but it also was the dish that had been sold 7,000 times a week. So everybody in the kitchen was so tired of selling or making it, and everyone, all the servers were tired of selling it. But guess what? It also was the highest profit margin item that we had. That's the reason why it existed. If it didn't have a place on the menu, like, you know, you can have great things, but if it costs a lot to make, it's not great for the company. It shouldn't necessarily be the main driver dish or beer or whatever it is. That particular thing needs to be profitable. It needs to be healthy for it to exist. And after a while, you know, the chef, he was like, yeah, man, I didn't even create this recipe. The last chef did, but the owners were like, you must keep this on the menu because it's great. And now I've kind of adopted it as my own. And then he left, and the next guy had to come on and start making it, and even the next guy's like, dude, I don't want to make this shit. This is like 1992, Colin. But what's funny is now what was old is new again, and it's kind of cool. I see people making black ink shellfish pastas on menus today, and it seems edgy and cool, or it's like retro cool, and I'm like, yeah, I remember that. I've sold that back when it was uncool. But that's the way it works. You know, that's the way you do it. So let's talk about beer. Matt and I have already gone through. We had Daylight, which was just, you know, kind of the beer drinker's beer. This is if you respect yourself and you like to drink Bud Light or so. No offense, Bud Light. I know I'm saying this in the same episode as a company that is owned by Bud Light, or by the creators that make Bud Light. But I would say it falls in line in the same category, but it's definitely more complex, and it has a really beautiful flavor profile. So Daylight is like something you would have just sitting by the pool.
Well, we've talked about that for at least a year, maybe 2 years, about like that's the next thing in beer is crushable lagers that you can just
Yeah, I always marveled at like why microbreweries were not making the thing that was the most sold beer, you know, for so long. But in hindsight, I realize it's also it's hard to make those beers, and it's time consuming, right? Like it takes about double the amount of time to make a proper lager as it does to just put out an IPA. Even if you're going to make a craft beer, it would be nice to have something that kind of fits that market. So I'm assuming that's where Daylight comes from.
Yeah, look, I think if you look at the roots of brewing, I mean, Pilsner and German style brewing practices basically define what American brewing is. I mean, they wrote the book literally, right? And even though we're all making ales here, I think our affinity for kind of the purest nature of German beer and like how delicious those beers are. I mean, until you've, you know, been drinking, you know, like the Augustiner Keller Pills or the Helles or whatever, like until you're drinking those beers, like you really don't get it. But once you do, I think as brewers, we all obsess about that like perfect, simplistic beer that you can just crush all day. And this is more of a passion beer for us. So we were making a Pilsner called Uncle Rick's Pilsner, named after Rick Guthrie. And it was working out okay, but it really just wasn't the brand we wanted it to be. And we wanted to do something that was kind of more in this like low calorie space. Cause let's be real. I'm 39 now. We all like to drink a lot of beer and, sometimes pounding 7.2 IPAs all day doesn't really cut it. And it was just this desire to make basically this kind of hybrid between, what we think of as like crushable, like Bud Light, American light lagers and the kind of like aspirin-y mineralic Pilsner, Czech hop profiled, like herbaceous, delicious Pilsner experience or really like a Keller Pils. We wanted to kind of like play off of that, but create something that was, 105 calories and just crushable. And this actually started out as like a kind of a side project in the pilot brewery that they were calling Dad Beer. And I came in and tasted it one day. And, we were talking about what should we do? Should we do a low calorie IPA? Yeah, Dad Beer, right? It's perfect.
Yeah. I got to ask though, like, I would have to imagine that, through the merger, the acquisition, that you probably went to a Budweiser facility. You've probably visited the grounds.
Yeah. Drank it from the tank, baby.
Yeah, but so was there like a cool moment where you saw how their lagers or their pilsners were being made, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Like that's a really cool way because what you could say whatever you want to say about Budweiser or Bud Light, that is A, super consistent, and B, not being made at the same facility. It's being made at many facilities all around the world, but anywhere you go, it tastes the same. And there is something really sexy about consistency because it's fucking hard to do that. And so
they're truly exceptional, man. They're truly exceptional brewers being able to do that consistency. It's so hard to do.
Yeah, it's it's like, it's the same thing like going back to Taco Bell. You can get a Taco Bell burrito anywhere they make them, and they're going to taste the same. It's not sexy to say that, but I find it to be sexy. I find it to be really cool that it's like, wow, you've been able to iron out this program and iron out this system so well that you can do this anywhere. So were you influenced in any way by watching how they're doing it, and has that influenced any of your practices in scaling?
Yeah, look, I think we love the supply side of Anheuser-Busch. The guys who run that are just, man, they're just awesome, like lifetime brewers, fully committed to the product, fully committed to the beer. They all, you go there and you ask, what's your favorite beer? They all tell you Budweiser, not Bud Light, usually Budweiser out of the tank, like that's the experience they want. And it really is like you go in and you walk through that brew house. There's a chandelier that hangs in their 4 stories of brew house from the World's Fair, and like these beautiful like European style brew houses. And yeah, it's pretty magical, like the St. Louis brewery and what they do. But they make one product, and just like you're saying, like it's pretty cool how consistent Taco Bell is, or all these big companies who can create a product and put it anywhere. But they often can't do what we do, right? Just like I can't do what they do. So I think we kind of look at it as a point of inspiration and like precision, and nice knowing that we have a brick and mortar company with that kind of ethos behind it that supports kind of the things we're talking about, which is consistency and quality. And so I think that's the biggest piece we love about that, is to know that it really does come from this is a brewer run company. These people believe in beer, and that makes us feel good about them believing in us. But yeah, as far as inspiration, we just wanted the beer we wanted to drink. We wanted just, and again, it could have been low calorie IPA, but so far I'm yet to find one I really like. Yeah. So, and I think we were all in the same place. We're like, let's just make the beer we really want to make, which is, basically kind of this, it's a truly American light beer, but inspired by Pilsner.
Yeah. And so we're going through these beers. I gotta say, man, that pernicious though. Like if someone
pretty lit. I should tell that story. That's a good story.
Well, yeah. I will say it. No offense to all the brewers we've ever had on the show and all the things that they do, but that pernicious, I've always been a major fan of that IPA. It's badass, and it'll kick you in the teeth. It's 7.3% alcohol. It's a big deal. It's not. It doesn't doesn't go down, or it goes down easy, and that's the problem. Is it goes down super easy, and then you realize you're three in, and you're standing on the roof of your house with your shirt off, screaming you're a golden god. So so things like that.
It's not for newbies, man. That's like a proper. You need to be a good IPA craft beer drinker to session some Perney.
What? Please give us just the 10-cent story of how that came to be, because I would love to know.
Yeah. So Perney kind of came out of I'm calling it Perney. It's Pernicious. That's just like our in-house name.
That's right. Like Bobby and I, when we talk about Robert De Niro, we're good friends. Bobby,
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah,
Bobby,
Bob.
you and Bob's.
Yeah.
Nice. So we opened the brewery. I think if any of you guys followed us back then, the first beer everybody was talking about on the IPA side was our Freak of Nature double IPA. And that was very much this beer that Jessica and I had worked on for 2 years. It was really, really inspired by Pliny the Elder, but wanted to be kind of our own take, a little fruitier, a little less just straight kind of Simcoe, dank tangerine stuff going on. Anyway, so we had that. And then, we really were just on this IPA journey. We were just evolving, we're listening to all these podcasts and meeting our mentors, Vinny and Matt Brennelson and everybody and getting to work with them. And so we were kind of just on this journey of like, developing new IPAs all the time at the pub and just kind of honing our craft and like just making all these different IPAs, trying to be better at IPA. And then 2 years into the company, we were out for our second GABF. We just won a medal the year before. We ended up medaling at that GABF too. And from there, that was like my first time drinking the beers from Society. I don't know if you guys have had those guys' beer down in San Diego. They're phenomenal IPA producer. I mean, not that there isn't 100 in San Diego. You can everybody makes some of the world's best IPA in San Diego, but that and along with some other breweries. So we went to the West Coast, did a little kind of IPA tour, if you will, and Jessica and I kind of honed in on this idea of creating this very what I would say it was like the uber modern West Coast style IPA that was really just bitterness was still kind of high, but completely removing crystal malt, going super heavy on your dry hops, kind of like what led, I think, up to kind of the progression of the New England style and how we're dry hopping those things. And there's a lot of thought and shift in like how dry hopping process was happening at that time. And it was really yielding these just like incredibly citrusy, tropical, beautiful beers that just were like really impactful to us. And so we wanted to kind of do that, but with our own little kind of spin on it, which is just softening it a little more, bringing that IBU down a little bit more, punching up the fruit, keeping it bone dry. And so basically on the flight back, we wrote a recipe, we called it East Side or Die, and brewed it at the pub like that week we got back, and we all drank it. And we were just like, yes, this is the shit. This is it. And then, that was just kind of a pub name we used it didn't work out via trademark. And so we looked at our name. Wicked Weed comes from the quote by King Henry VIII of hops are a wicked and pernicious weed. And I can go into the whole story, but felt like, it was actually, I was out doing a beer. I was doing a beer with Tommy Arthur of the Lost Abbey, where I was getting to do a sour beer collaboration with one of my heroes. So it was really cool. And he was sitting there. He's like, why don't you have a beer called Pernicious? He's like, you should have an IPA named Pernicious. And I was like, you know what, Tommy, you're right. I should have an IPA named Pernicious. Right. And we went back. We were like, remember, because I think we named like some weird one-off sour beer Pernicious one time. And I was like, you know what, we're gonna reuse this name. This is where we should use it. And kind of the rest is history. And that's been, won a silver medal at GABF, first West or East Coast brewery to win a medal in the IPA category. And that was just another big step of moving the brand and everything forward. And it's about going to be 60% of our production next year, and definitely a driver of what we're doing. But it just kind of like set the tone for like the expectation we have for the rest of the products, like Coastal Love and everything else you're going to try.
And because of this podcast, Tommy now owns 25% of Pernicious.
I know, I'm sure he does. He'll be texting me shortly for his royalty. I divulged too much.
No, yeah. This is all pub talk right now. We're 4 beers in, but
circle of trust.
Yeah, no one's listening. It's fine. Okay, we opened up this s'mores beer.
Let's get into that.
Unreal. This is, for one, it's 9%, so that's crazy. But as it's listed, Imperial Stout brewed with chocolate, vanilla, and cinnamon. But it does give a little nod to a toasted marshmallow, which is so predominant when you drink this. It really does deliver on its promise. This tastes like if you were able to crush up graham crackers, Hershey's, chocolate, and marshmallows, and toast them and throw them into a beer. Like, what the fuck? This is crazy. Like, how did you do that?
Well, I think this is really cool, and I think we're going to talk about raspberry starfruit next. I think this is like the new frontiers of beer and food coming together. It's like all of these techniques we're finding for like pulling things out of ingredients, because the reality isn't like a really small craft scale. Yeah, you can just mash up a bunch of marshmallows and graham crackers and shit and throw it all in the mash tun, and that all works, or in the kettle, and that kind of works out, you know? Yeah. But when you start talking about consistency in product, and like those things are not really effective long-term for stability in a product and also making the best product. So it's like, how do we find the ways to recreate these experiences using always like high quality ingredients and natural products? It's a very strong ethos. It will never be an artificial flavor or any of that bullshit in any of the products that we create. That's just not who we are. But we challenge ourselves to be more. I think it's been the great journey of opening, you know, a restaurant like Cultura and being more culinary focused. I think it's helped us kind of open how we approach solving creative problems. And so, yeah, that beer is all about solving two problems. One, we wanted to like make something that tastes like a s'more, but it was part of kind of this 4-pack going out called Guilty Pleasures, and it's those brands. And the key is, man, dessert stouts, you got to have them at 9+%. They need to be big body, lots of sweetness, and then you just build in those dessert flavors. And I think it delivers kind of the most magical stout experience, which is just like, I'm drinking a stout, but holy shit, it tastes like s'mores, right?
Yeah, and that 9% alcohol is not perceptible at all.
Yeah.
And that's key to just good fermentation. You know, I think that's a big difference. Keep your yeast healthy. You're not going to have a lot of aggressive alcohol heat. And that's something that you just got to fight for all the time in a brewery. And I think over the years, making so many high alcohol beers, we've gotten pretty good at keeping that heat down.
And isn't it true, like, as we were discussing with some of the guys over at Hill, that like when it says like a chocolate malt or a chocolate anything in certain beers like imperial stouts, it's not like you're really putting chocolate in. Isn't it part of the actual malt that you're using that imparts that chocolate flavor?
Absolutely. So it goes back to like bringing the flavors here. Like how are we making this beer? You know, we're using some natural vanilla extract in there to kind of help boost up the marshmallow flavor. I think there's also like kind of there's almost a malty kind of grainy texture to marshmallows, right? So like oats and things like that help kind of anchor that. But yes, this combination of using, you know, roasted malt that kind of has a chocolate presence, or using another malt that would have more of a graham cracker presence, kind of layering that with also cacao nibs and other ingredients to kind of like bring it all together and give you that really clear experience of having the graham cracker, the chocolate, and the marshmallow. Well, it's really like 6 or 7 things coming together to create that. And I think that's the fun and exciting part of expanding and like kind of continuing to push. And again, it's like, thank you everybody out there drinking these beers, because without you guys supporting us doing cool stuff like this, you know, if you don't buy it, we don't get to do it. I think it's kind of one of the sad things of the dumbing down of the craft beer aisle in some ways, is that, you know, all anybody buys now is like fruited beers and IPAs. So if you go to the store, all those fun esoteric, the export stouts and the porters and, you know, whatever, they're all kind of like dwindling away. And we're just looking at these beer aisles that are just, you know, mostly IPAs, lagers, and fruit beers and dessert stouts, which is mostly our portfolio. So they're also like the best beers.
Let's get to this, the last beer that we have in can, the raspberry starfruit burst that you just talked to. It's called a session sour, which is interesting. Obviously, like session ales indicate that they would probably be like a lower ABV in general. This particular one, I'm trying to find it. 4.5. Yeah, so that is a low ABV for any beer in general, and definitely sours tend to not be that low as well. So, what's going on? I mean, we just tried it right now, and it's bright. It's refreshing. What do you think, Matt?
Well, the color is bright red to begin with, and it's starfruit and what else?
Raspberry.
Starfruit and raspberry. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It looks like almost like a dark rosé color.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So that's a session sour. First of all, like when we say session, we're referring to sessionability, right? That's what session means. It was like a beverage that you could sit and just drink a lot of. Yeah. That's kind of what it meant, right? That's what it came from with the session ales from England, and that's how we kind of adapted the name. Really, Dogfish coined the session sour name with Sequenched, and you know, just we saw it as like, okay, so this kind of comes back to, you talked about the Fungatorium. We haven't a chance to talk about sour beer, which I think we will next with Trans Am Lamb. But you know, we were making these ridiculously fruited beers on the sour side. I'm sure you guys have had some of the Angels, like specifically Red Angel or Raspberry Sour, and you know, that was using 4, 5, 6 pounds of raspberries per gallon of beer that we were making to get that kind of raspberry flavor. And it gave you this big, rich red color and everything. And to me, those were all like the beautiful, magical parts of sour beer that made me interested. It was like, I was drinking a beer that tasted like a fresh raspberry, that looked like a raspberry, and at the same time was not sweet, but it was still giving me all of those experiences. And so we kind of looked to create something that was kind of moving from our gozas that we were making into making something new. But we didn't want to have just these big fruited, like really sour Berliners. You know, we wanted it to be something that was like more approachable, that kind of connected the dots, and also kind of like wanted to play back on a little bit of like the child of the 90s thing you're talking about, man, that like, you know, the candies and all the things we kind of grew up with of having that kind of magical moment. And that's really what the brand was, is to try to hit on like color, aroma, and flavor, and give you this big, juicy, tart fruit experience that really kind of had the same pH almost as like a glass of juice, opposed to a glass of like lemonade, right? Where it's so sour that it's kind of wearing on you. And that was the goal. And I think we've kind of delivered it. And it's just, it's become, you know, one of my favorite things to drink that we make, because of just how much it delivers for how little ABV and sessionability.
Yeah.
I will take you to task with, there are two things on this label, though very, very, very small in font, that these old eyes were able to conjure up, maybe with the use of a magnifying glass. But
oh yeah, let's talk about it.
Two things. Colored with vegetable juice. I want to know about that. And then also, this one kind of stuck out to me. Brewed and canned in Lexington, Virginia. That is not an Asheville product.
Yep. So actually it is kind of a long story, but so first of all, with that, to get that color, so that's where I'm saying like using those chef tools, right? How do we deliver that flavor, color, and aroma? I mean, I got a bunch of raspberries in there for sure, but the raspberries we put in wouldn't get you to that like deep, rich red that you guys are seeing in the glass. So we're working with this company called Amaretti, and it's basically, you know, we've worked with them to get custom blends of colors, but basically we're using, you know, things like beet powder, purple potato, purple carrot powders, things like that, where we're isolating these basically, which is stuff we started doing back in the day at the pub. I used to use beet powder to add color to recipes and just doctor things up, because I think visual is so important. So yeah, that's where that's coming from.
That's what I assumed. That's fine. I will allow it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you've passed.
Well, again, I think it's like, you know, these are beers. I think craft beer doesn't have rules, and I think as long as we're being like authentic about what we're putting in the glass, and we're putting things in that we believe in, I think that, you know, people thinking that beer can only be a lager is the problem with why beer didn't, you know, why craft beer had to come and say something so loud that, hey, beer can be more than just a lager, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's all super important and really cool to see. And now people are putting popsicles in beers and shit. So,
but so do you have another facility in Lexington? Is that in Virginia? Is that what's going on?
Yeah. So sorry, I didn't get to that piece.
That's fine.
That is, we have it. Those cans are basically we're sharing kind of a production relationship with Devil's Backbone Brewing, which is one of the sister breweries. We were working with them originally to make Uncle Rick's Pilsner. Jason Oliver, I don't know, he's won like 5 GABF medals just for Vienna Lager, along with like however many. I mean, one of the best lager producers out there. So we wanted to work with him. He already knew him pre-acquisition, and we wanted to work with him on a lager. And that kind of led to, you know, goes back to Pernicious, us trying to maintain that we're making all those IPAs. So we started looking at, hey, as we need more capacity, could we develop a relationship with Devil's Backbone, kind of a like-minded brewery in the mountains, and see if we could produce something. And so we focused on lager, and then we started working on this, on moving one of our burst beers up there so we could free up some more space for Perny. And, you know, it was a great journey, but long story short, basically, those cans say that, but legally it's okay because we're owned by the same company, and we actually made that in Asheville. It just says that on the can, but we had planned to have it brewed up there, but very happy that it's being brewed in-house. But these are the challenges you're talking about from earlier in the conversation. The future is we will run out of tank space in our brewery. We've filled every square foot. We can brew 100 and change thousand barrels. And, you know, the next steps are, where does future capacity lie for this company? And I think those are the big challenges we're trying to figure out in the next few years here as we move into that, because it goes back to, if we're going to still have that consistent quality ethos, like, we need to be able to stand behind it. I'm a firm believer is like, you know, good brewers can make beer on any equipment. All the equipment we have is great. So it's all about just building out the right teams. And, you know, it's just going to be up to us to deliver, and for the consumer to decide long term if we fulfilled that, you know, that kind of promise we made to them when they started drinking our beer, is that we weren't going to back down on quality. And I hope that's the case.
Yeah, and I know we're running short on time, so 2 more things I want to do before we let you go here. We're gonna taste this Cultura, or the trans
Trans Am Lamb.
Trans Am Lamb here. So walk us through that. And then you had mentioned earlier that there's some other plans other than beer coming up for Wicked Weed. So tell us about that as well.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah, so first off, we just popped the Trans Am Lamb, which when I think Trans Am, I think about my brother's 1979 silver anniversary Trans Am with the Firebird on the front, T-tops, 6.6 liter. Yeah, 403, 8-cylinder, big old fat Dunlop tires on the back with a Blaupunkt stereo inside. You have to have a mullet and a mustache if you drive that car, but it paints a perfect picture as to what you're giving a nod to.
As to what an Appalachian lambic should look like, right?
Exactly. We just popped it. Matt and I are consuming this right now, but Trans Am talking about across the entire country, right? So you have a nod to the West Coast as well as a nod to the East Coast. Is that correct in its construction?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a weird kind of misleading thing. Like, of course, it seems like it's all abbreviated that way. This is kind of funny in that we started making spontaneous beer. This is going to be a long conversation if I get into what spontaneous beer is, but basically it's the model of lambic, and it takes us 4 years to make a product. We're putting the beer out in cool ships in the night air only when it's below 30 degrees. We let it cool. The natural organisms in the air, the flora settles on the beer, and then we let it go through a very natural fermentation in oak for up to 3 years and then blend that back. And so as that program's getting going and we're doing our first blends, we wanted to bring in some fresh hops since we're a hoppy brewery and kind of use some fresh hops to finish off one of our spontaneous beers. And at the time, kind of spontaneous beer was, it's this weird word of using lambic in the US to describe these beers, right? It's kind of it's like champagne, right? So lambic's only made in the Zen Valley. So they get really uptight about using that word. So the nomenclature and kind of the beer nerd community had become Amlam. And then we decided we had our artist already had drawn a picture of a Trans Am on a label that we ended up not using, which is kind of funny, but that's why we called it Trans Am Lamb. And it was really just to be named after, this kind of dry hopped or wet hopped spontaneous beer that we produce. But it's really just it's the pinnacle of sour beer making. It takes forever to fucking make these things. They're super finicky, but when you deliver it in a glass, it's like nothing else you've ever had. And I think that's the draw of lambic and spontaneous beer, is that it is truly a beer with an absolute sense of place and a terroir. And it'll speak a little bit more as to the things we're moving into now. And that is so important in a beverage, is that you have that story to tell, and then it comes from an authentic place. And then I think it can truly be something special.
Everyone just listen to a little Billy Squire while you're drinking this beer, and you'll put yourself right where you need to be.
Exactly.
I'm an old soul, my friends. I make old references. Sorry. Only the old people listening will go, yeah, I get that. The Stroke. Don't you remember The Stroke?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But I think we lost probably half of our audience there. But
so many people rolling their eyes. Okay, boomer, all that stuff. Yeah. Anyways, all right, we are running out of time. This could be a Joe Rogan 3-hour escapade conversation, because there's so much to unpack with what you're doing. If you ever feel the need to have a part 2, we would love to do that someday.
Yeah, anytime, man.
But you do have you're delving into the wine world, the cider world, and of course you have restaurants as well. I know those are 3 major categories to just sum up in the last 5 to 10 minutes of this episode. But Cultura, as you referenced, you are a restaurant in Asheville. Maybe just kind of give everyone a little understanding as to what that is and how that comes to be. There aren't a lot of breweries that open up restaurants, in a sense. So I'd love to kind of understand what the idea was behind that, and what it feels like if you're just kind of hearing it on a podcast. What does that restaurant feel like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, Cultura, we just talked about Cultura a little bit in that beer you were talking about, the Trans Am Lamb, right? Cultura is the name of our spontaneous program. It's also the name of our restaurant. They got a Best New Restaurant in America beer nomination last year.
Right.
Unfortunately, about 3 weeks before our COVID shutdown, so it wasn't the most effective timing for a beard nomination, and the beard awards didn't actually happen this year. But it was about this journey of chasing kind of the if we're going to say these beers are worthy of these great experiential moments, we wanted to kind of try our chops at creating a restaurant that we thought was kind of in that same space and put spontaneous beer in the same place as the cider we're making, and also the wine program that we've been working on for the last year and change here, which is going to be called Vital Wines, and we'll be opening up at the restaurant, which I'll get to in a second. And so, I think just that kind of like cultura in general, that word I think is coming to mean, it just kind of is the overall blanket that supports kind of those creative outlets in the company that help us further push our ability to develop new things and understand flavor, and really becomes the thing that kind of feeds the fire that generates like everything else we do in the company, right? Those like kind of really niche-y creative things like drive us to think bigger and challenge ourselves in ways that we can't if we're just focusing on making a new IPA recipe every day. So I think that's kind of the best way to talk about like how it all comes together. Through COVID, fine dining is a very challenging thing. And I hate even calling it fine dining, but like, a chef-driven food experience with a lot of theatrical and beverage pieces to it that is what people expect from, again, it's like everything we talked about, right? People have never put more time and energy into food and beverage and the experiences they're having. So the expectation for us and the bar we've set for ourselves is always higher. And this was about kind of pushing that. Through that, we had to close down for a while. Good to say, like, our pub and our funk restaurants are functioning, so our staff's well and everything. But it's a really exciting time because probably about when this airs, I believe on the 14th right now, unless things change, what they could change, we're going to be reopening the Cultura Bar with a small wine bar menu.
Yeah.
And the bar program was really innovative. We have a super dope, really deep natural wine list. I think one of the strongest ones around, and great mixologist and a great cocktail program. But it'll be almost like it'll be a Vital Wine pop-up, basically launching the brand. We'll be pouring the wines there that we produced. And again, they're all natural wines, very kind of much leaning into our background as fruit fermenters through the sour program, and kind of like allowing us to express our take on what wine is. And you guys can obviously assume, it makes sense that we've gotten into natural wine. It's the obvious progression from all the other things we've been working on. So I'm really excited about the synergy this is all going to hold, and just, excited to let people see what this looks like. I've been obsessed with the idea of making wine for like 5 years, and it really just came to last year. Harvest came around, and, I talked to my business partner and said, hey, can I go spend $40,000 to buy some grapes and see if we know what we're doing? And, Brian said, yeah, which he usually does. And so Jen Courier, who I hope you guys meet sometime, she's amazing. She's our head winemaker and running the program. And just really, really proud of the stuff we're putting out. And I can go into details, but they'll be fun. Come check it out.
Where are those grapes coming from?
So we're mostly, this year, our harvest will 100% be from Yakima Valley. But this last year, we did get some from Northern California, from Lodi, and then a vineyard called Two Mountains in Yakima Valley is the one we're kind of leaning into and working with. And the goal with that being just, we're going to get more. We're very aligned on farming practices. He's very much minimal intervention. Tries to basically biodynamic practicing and try to leave the grapes as much as he can, which is exactly what we're looking for. But we're trying to kind of go all in with him, support him, so we can have a little more of a working relationship with our farmers. It's coming out of the fact that, we buy a ton of hops from Yakima.
Yeah.
So this vineyard,
I was going to ask if you could ship them on the same delivery truck, but
and so they're on the same trucks and everything. So it's all making sense. All of our fruit for the sour program grows there too. So it's like a really synergistic relationship with all of our farmers out there.
So you have to ship refrigerated trucks with the fruit, and then you ferment here. You're fermenting in North Carolina. Gotcha. You're not shipping juice.
We're shipping. It just depends. We do a lot of carbonic. We have a press. We can crush here. We'll get some, like our rosé is crushed there and left on. We have a Tempranillo rosé just showed up yesterday. So that was 12 hours on the skins. That was left there. And then
you guys didn't send us any of that.
Well, it's still juice, but yeah, I know we should have sent you the wines. I do have the wines ready. We could do another podcast about.
There's a part two.
We're
going to hold you to it.
We have Jen on as well. Yeah.
Jen's she's great. She's way more entertaining than I am. So
Matt and I, we made a wine earlier this year with our friends at Botanist and Barrel, and I'm sure you know them as well because they actually live in Asheville but make their products up there in Pine Grove. I always say I always get it wrong, but up there near Hillsboro, and We made a rosé with them earlier this year, which was fantastic. Bottled Up Opinions. It was probably like a 30 case, 14 case. I forget what we ultimately made. It was very, very, very small production, and look forward to possibly doing that again. But there's a lot of good wine that can be made in this state. I think you are going about it the right way, where getting the good fruit from regions where they are grown really well is a great way to start, and then you can kind of also blend in with some of the local fruit too. It's just North Carolina is a little bit of a struggle when it comes to growing some fantastic fruit, and I think you just have to be aware of that and just kind of accept.
Same reason we can't grow hops here, I mean, it's just
right.
You want to make the best products, you got to have the best ingredients. I think that there's great grapes that are grown here, but that's just not where we start our focus. I hope that long term, we are committed to. We want to bring muscadine back. I think there's a project waiting to kind of happen there. There's some wild native varietals I think are going to be, we'll find some cool ways to work with. I think the coolest thing about this whole experience has been, natural wine shows you the role yeast can play and fermentation can play to be more flavor expressive and take things to the next level. And I think that typically, just like sour beer, ends up, the origins of it end up being kind of a lot of off flavors, a lot of EA and acetic and things like that. But in time, man, you can get to these really beautiful acid expressions and things that take, like some of these wines we're making are just so phenomenally tropical, like guava, green papaya, and just citrus and just, I know it's coming from these yeast because this is the same mother culture that's been in we're not adding our mixed culture, but obviously if it's in the same room, we're probably picking some of it up.
Yeah,
and I'm just noticing like this clear expression that we see from the development of all the fruit yeast that have come into our program. It's kind of that amalgamation of everything. It's just expressing so fruity, and I'm really excited to see what that yields long term for us and for all these other breweries who are taking up winemaking. We're not farmers, we're fermenters. So we have a whole other piece of the business, which is growing the product that we're going to have to learn. But the fermentation side is where we start, and I think there's a lot of exciting things happening for so many breweries right now in the wine space, and that's super cool.
Well, hey, one thing, giving a nod to one of our fantastic sponsors of this podcast is Triangle Wine Company, where you definitely can get some Wicked Weed beer, maybe at some point some Wicked Weed wine, and maybe some cider as it comes out. But Triangle Wine Company has 4 locations, soon to be 5, all around the Triangle. You can get delivery, you can get curbside pickup, you can order online. They're really making it easier for you because we got to get our booze somehow. We got to figure out a way to do it and make it simple. So make sure you go to trianglewinecode.com and you can use the NCFB promo code to get a nice little discount and save a few shekels so that you can maybe buy a few more beers in that whole process because there's so much coming out of Wicked Weed and all over North Carolina.
Or you can use that discount and also pick up some Proof Alcohol ice cream while you're there.
There you go.
And Proof Alcohol ice cream, I'd like to see what Walt would think about that. So we'll have to send you a pint at some point or bring you one out there to Asheville because it's alcohol infused with ice cream. They get it up to 7% alcohol, and there's all kind of different ones that they use, like
they
bourbon.
got the pumpkin spice.
Oh, the pumpkin spice.
Pumpkin spice alcohol ice cream just came out. Of course.
How do you say no to that? You just can't say no.
Put down that Starbucks latte and grab some pumpkin spice ice cream. Thank you, Wicked Weed, as it definitely has affected me over this time. Yeah, you can't just sit there and drink 6 different Wicked Weed beers and not feel good about yourself at the end of a show.
We make people feel good,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's what we do.
Wickedly awesome.
So think differently about dessert and go to proofalcoholicecream.com, and you can find them at Triangle Wine Company and also at Lowe's and Harris Teeter. They are just, maybe at a BP soon, like where you can find some pernicious. You can find it all over the place.
Just look for the little red refrigerator that's proprietary to Proof Alcohol ice cream.
Yeah. I will say this, Walt, we definitely want to do a second episode, but I think that second episode should be, so much more about the food, the wine, and the culture of the area, which means that we're going to have to drive out to Asheville and maybe see each other in person. Maybe we'll wear masks, or maybe by the time that we do that second episode, that won't be a thing. We'll see. Hopefully that's the case. But we would like to see all that you have going on, because you are really doing a lot for the community. You've made a huge impact in North Carolina, and obviously this is a story that needed to be told on our show, so we appreciate you giving us the time.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time, for all your innovation and creativity, and what you do for North Carolina beer. So everybody out there, go pick yourself up some Wicked Weed beer or other product sour beers, all these beautiful dessert guilty pleasure beers, and you will drink very merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NC F&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.